Hey, welcome back to the Positive Side Podcast. The host, Jeremy Todd. Glad you're tuning in. Obviously, the Wednesday interviews are so much fun, and today this is so good. I love interviewing people that I've met, but more importantly, people that I follow. And we're gonna bring Johnny on here in just a second. But I want to talk about a review that I've recently gotten, and it's just so awesome. And again, keep those reviews coming. You can go to iTunes and leave those 5-star reviews. It just allows other people to find the show. This one here is from Cortez, Chicago's in the house. Not sure why I never listened to not quite sure why I never listened to before, but I am now, and I'm glad I did. I feel fired up and motivated, and I can't wait to take these insights to my team and continue to grow with them. Look forward to making this podcast part of my daily routine. My man, I appreciate you taking the time because, a lot of times we talk about leaving reviews, and I'm going to do it, but you actually took the time, and it means more to me than you actually realize. So much love, Cortez. I appreciate you. Today, my guest, and I'm going to introduce him by telling, how do I want to introduce Johnny? Let's just first of all read his bio. CEO at Johnny Lujan International from California, motivational speaker, author, consultant, and coach. I help my clients transform their organizations, their small businesses, and find the courage to live an extraordinary life. Workshops for teens called Prepare for Impact, group coaching, individual coaching, and specialized discrete coaching for C-suite executives in recovery. Johnny, one of the reasons I have you on the show today is I believe, and I'm going to back up just a second, I believe we should all have some sort of a mentor. Now, I listened to something the other day with, I think it was actually my buddy, Dave Anderson. I'm not sure if you've ever followed Dave Anderson before. He's the best. I love him. And we talked about some of his mentors, and what we really talked about was, how do you find a mentor? Do you have to actually tell the mentor? Do you have to talk to mentors? And I don't think you do, because a mentorship can be like for me, I follow you on social media. I watch your videos. I look at your posts. And for you, you are a mentor to me. And I'm going to tell you why. Because your story, obviously, you've been sober, I think 32 years or something like that, which again, I think is amazing. Your faith is extremely prevalent in your life. Now, me, I am agnostic, but it's something that I respect so much about you. And I learned so much about you, about your faith, and really just the positive side, no pun intended, of your message. And that's why I really wanted to have you on the show. And I want you to introduce yourself real quick to the people all around the world. Tell them a little bit about you and just lay it on the line. Tell everybody about yourself.
All right. I'm a pretty vulnerable guy. I'm always open. I'm an open book. I'm never embarrassed of my previous life or who I am today. My previous life was, was caught up in drugs and alcohol, biker lifestyle, riding Harleys, that whole lifestyle, if you could relate to that lifestyle. After I got in recovery, I learned that I was a little boy in a grown man's body, and I didn't really fully develop emotionally. And I turned to drugs and alcohol as a means of acceptance, satisfaction, worthiness, all those things. And I lived that life for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, I got to that turning point that, the low place that people talk about, that you couldn't get any lower, and you continue to drop lower, losing my house, losing my wife, losing my child. All those things were irrelevant to me because I was such a self-centered individual. And then one day when I was just beyond myself, for me, because of my faith at the time, I had none. And I just kind of looked up in the heavens and said, man, if you're up there, make me the man you want me to be. I'm afraid of going to prison, and they're coming to get me. And it set me on a path of a spiritual journey that helped me realize who Johnny really was. And it took, going into recovery and fully engulf myself in recovery and take it seriously enough to find what I was looking for the whole time inside myself. It was already in there. I just never knew how to access it. And so over a period of time, I just continued working on myself, self-recovery, learning about who I am. And, I guess you'd say the rest is history. In my motto and in my MO, when I give talks, I always talk about living a life beyond your wildest expectations. And I remember I had 30 days in recovery, and an old man looked at me and said, "What is your greatest dream? What is your greatest vision for your life, Johnny?" And at 30 days recovery, I never forget this. I said, if I could have 4 of the same size tires on my car, I'd be a king. Inspiration in those days. And now today, being a CEO, running businesses, running culture, doing personal coaching, group coaching, trainings, I am truly living a life beyond my wildest expectations, not because of the zip code I live in or the cars I drive, but because of the person that I have become. And in my spiritual journey, I've learned to lead by example. My journey is not your journey, and my journey is not anybody else's journey that's on this call. My journey is my personal journey. And I believe if people could really focus in on their journey, they would find a lot more peace and be able to overcome the hurdles that they see when the world and everybody else is trying to make you like me. And obviously nobody is.
Absolutely. And one of the things you're talking about being sober, and I know that's a huge part of your life now, but I want to ask you, because I know there's a lot of people out there that go through these journeys, whether it be drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or any kind of other addiction you want to put in that you want to eliminate out of your life. Has it always been easy? Have you fall off, no pun intended, have you fallen off the bike to get back on the bike? Talk a little bit about some of those after you decided, hey, I'm going to quit. What was it like after that? Like, how did you attack those times when you're all by yourself now? You're stone cold sober. What temptations go through your mind? And then how do you, for someone out there watching this, how do you get past that? Because sometimes that's what it takes for someone to go right back down that road of drinking and drug abuse or whatever the abuse is, that they just can't get past that one roadblock. What would you tell someone that's watching this right now to help them get over that?
And I'll be vulnerable. I did have a relapse when I had my very first 6 months clean and sober. And I told myself, I'll never drink again. The police quit following me to work. I started living a better life, hangovers. I started playing ball with a bunch of sober guys. I had friends and everything was going great. And I thought, nothing's going to slip me up. And then the temptation came and I let my emotions overtake my boundaries. And for lack of better terms, I got angry, upset, and I went out one evening pretty darn hard. And here's the thing that really changed me was that even though I went out, I was so immature in my dealings with my feelings, I couldn't tell anybody. And I hid out, still going to meetings, still doing the sober living, but hid out with this huge guilt. And when I finally confessed, when I was supposed to get a 6-month chip and I never did, and everybody asked, hey, Johnny, how come you didn't get up there and get your chip? I finally had to tell my sponsor at the time that I went out. And I never forget this because I was always afraid of what people were going to say about me. And he looked at me and he gave me a hug. And all he said was, looks like you have a new sobriety date. Let's get back on. And that was the first time in my life that I experienced he just loved me for Johnny. It wasn't because I was sober 6 months. It wasn't because anything. And that changed it for me. And when we met after a couple of days, I knew that almost like in business, when we do business consulting and business coaching, the question always comes up, why? Right? Why are you building this business? Why are you moving to this state? Why? It's always the why will drive the dream. And in recovery, it's the same reason. Why are you wanting recovery? Because if you want recovery more than anything else on the planet, doesn't matter your house, your car, your wife, your spouse, your kids, my dream was to get sober. And I had to make a decision, which was a horrific decision that a lot of people questioned me at the time. I had to make a life choice decision, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the scariest thing I ever did, but that was the day that I basically put the dagger in the sand and drew the line and said, before my job, before my wife, before my kids, before anything on the planet, I will never drink again. And I think when you come to that resolve that nothing can stop you, I always explain that when recovery becomes your asset instead of your liability, that you're always chasing, like, oh, I got to get sober. I can't drink today. I can't use it. Oh, I can't eat today. I can't. When you overcome that, that becomes your asset. you're the most powerful person on the planet. And that's where I try to drive, and C-suite executives, we hide out a lot, right? We don't want to let the world know that we have a drinking problem, eating problem, drug problem, pornographic problem, whatever it is. Because if the word got out, usually you'd probably be, your board of directors would say, we'll get somebody else. So I try to do intimate conversations with these individuals and say, hey, dude, it's all right. Right? We've been there. I've been there. How do we resolve to say today's the day?
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to talk about one more thing with the sobriety part, and then we're going to transition a little bit about the business and the coaching side of it. But I put a post the other day on Facebook. It talked about firing your friends. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do as you grow. You're going to outgrow the field. You're going to get a little bit different. You're going to have different groups of friends and different interests. What do you tell someone now that I'm sober, okay, but typically when you're not sober, you hang around the same people. If someone's struggling with that, because I know that it's a real deal for people that are in those circles. How do you get out of those circles? Like, what would you recommend to someone to get out of those circles?
Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest, because if you have those tendencies of an addict, what realms around a lot of that is what you believe is relationship. Being with your buddies, being with your friends, you think they're supporting you. We do this, we go to the same places, we drink and all those kinds of things. And, it was told to me many, many years ago that is going to be your number one downfall, is the individuals holding onto your belt loops as you are trying to grow. You're trying to break through the web. And it happened to me back in the day where, 32 years ago, we didn't have cell phones. Okay. So for me to pack up and move to the other side of town and not know, and everybody thought I was dead because they haven't seen me in 6 months, best thing ever happened to me. 6 months later, I saw those individuals. And here's another part that got me moving forward, was that 6 months I grew significantly. And when I saw those individuals again, they were sitting in the same bar, drinking the same booze, doing the same things. So I'll just give you a scenario. So when I sit down with somebody and they say, I really want to get sober, I say, give me your cell phone for 30 days. Because everybody in that phone is trying to kill you. And there's only one person apparently sitting with you today that really believes in you and wants you to change. And if you can do that, then you have a good shot. If you continue the old behaviors continue.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about the coaching and bringing into those bad habits for maybe someone that is in a leadership position. When you think about leadership now, how do you define leadership? Because I think the leadership now is more vulnerable and open than it's ever been. And two things. I think there are a lot of people that are trying to hold on to that like old school leadership where I'm invincible, I'm the best, I cannot be stopped. And I think there's a new breed of leadership coming around, which I'm all in about. The vulnerability. Let me help. Let me get involved. Tell me about your family. I was told, because I've been in the car business a lot of times, and I've always been told that, as a manager, as a leader in a car dealership, you can't go out with your salespeople. You can't be around these types of people. And I think that's ass backwards. I think as a leader of a company, as leadership of a leader of any company, you go out and you lead by example again. So not only do you lead while you're at work as a leader within the company, but how do you lead outside of work? I think that's super, super important. So talk a little bit about what you do for your leaders and what you express to them now in an ever-changing environment.
The environment definitely is changing, especially when it comes to leadership. As you mentioned before, it used to be the good old boy club, where you had the CEO at the top and he was invincible. Nobody could get in his door. And what I've learned over the years is exactly what you said, vulnerability. Me as a leader, as a CEO of an organization, I go in and I'm very vulnerable, right? I want to be relatable. So when my employees, my team doesn't know which way to turn, they know they can come in my door, and nothing they're ever going to tell me is going to shock me. And I've had some doozies, so the industry I'm in now, an organization that I'm running now, we deal with a lot of, I guess you'd call it, formerly incarcerated individuals, and there's a whole lot of them. And when I go down to work with them, or I go down into the pitch you'd call it, I'm in jeans and a t-shirt, and they don't even know who I am. And then we just having a conversation about, hey, where you at? Where you going? Let me tell you a story. And then all of a sudden I walk away and they go, man, who was that guy? And they go, well, that's the boss. That's the CEO. It really opens up the door. And I believe, there's a lot of good books on servant leadership, and not necessarily just, Christian leaders, but being a servant to your team, being a servant to the field that you're in. And servanthood dwells in servants.
Absolutely.
So that's how you're for me, when I go in and coach people, it's like, how are you serving others? What are you doing to serve others? The way you are in the office, is it the same way you are when you're at Walmart or at Rayleigh's when they see you? Or are you standoffish? Or are you, because you live in that specific zip code, will you not have an association? I believe that old school, I've read leadership books for many, many years. And there's a few leadership books on some old leaders, some football coaches, some presidents, that they talked about some of the principles of leadership was you never associate with your team, right? They need to see you as the leader. They need to see you as this person sitting on a pedestal. Well, we know that the first fall of a leader is ego and pride, right?
Absolutely.
So when you put somebody up on that leadership and they start failing or their pride gets a hold of them, it's the first sign of a downhill spiral.
Yeah, it definitely is. And one of the other things that you mentioned briefly a couple times, and this is another reason I just respect the hell out of you, is that, and again, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody else in any types of religions, but there's a lot of Christians out there that talk the game but don't live the game, and that's one of my biggest arguments with a lot of different types of religions, because they're there every Sunday, but the rest of the week and they're a mess, or they're telling everybody about what they should do and not living that life. And that's one of the things I respect most about you, is that not only do you talk about it, but you're that's who you are, that's your identity, and I respect that so much about you. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because when I look out and I meet people every day, and I have people on the podcast, they talk about this, but they're not genuine with themselves. They're not authentic. They're not authentic with themselves. And that's what makes you so unique. So talk a little bit about why that's important, and what you would say to anybody else out there that would maybe not walk in the walk.
Yeah. I heard a quote many, many years ago from one of my mentors, Mr. Jim Rohn, and I've listened to everything he's ever put out. And he is a very spiritual driven individual, churchgoer and all that. But in his work, he never talks about that, right? But what he talks about from the stage, and when he talks about when he's among the people, is this quote, and it reflects everything I'm about. And I say it every time when I'm in church or when I meet people. And here's the quote. The quote says that your words, as it goes, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. And that is today's, I'll say it, that is today's church. That is today's leaders. That is today's political stance, whatever it might be, because we have lost the fact that we're all vulnerable. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. So if you can't be vulnerable and be the same person you are in my zip code, or I am down here in Oak Park, then I'm really not authentic. And if you're not authentic it's another principle. If you're not authentic one way, then you're not authentic anyway.
Yeah.
Because the principle is what you do with the small things, you do with the big things. So what you do with your character in the small things, you do with your character in the big things. And again, right, I launched my own church 10 years ago, but I have a small church and a very specific demographic of people, but they know that if they were to see me at the lake, if they were to see me on my motorcycle or see me in the pulpit, they're going to know that it's just Johnny. Right? I don't, and again, we have many friends that aren't on the same path I'm on, and that's all right. That's all right. Right? If they don't, I need to keep myself in check. My road, right? Keep my side of the street clean. I love people. I love to help people. If they have questions, I answer them. Sometimes my answers aren't right. Sometimes I say, you know what? Maybe your answers. Maybe I investigate your answer. Yeah. But that's what makes me authentic. And that's why I think people, it's one of those gifts that I guess I lived such a hard life for so many years that I don't want big deals. I don't want big deal is, strung out on dope, living in a Datsun on the beach, eating out of garbage cans. That's a big deal. Yeah. Other than that, not too much going on, right? love your neighbor, bro.
Yeah, just be the best version of yourself every single day. And, like you said, if you catch the same thing with me, if you catch me here, you catch me downtown, you catch me in, I'm going to Phoenix next week. You catch me I am exactly the same no matter where I am. It never changes. But it's also great because I don't have to act like anybody else. I just get to act like the best version of myself. And I tell you what, it makes life so much easier. One of my favorite books of all time is from John Maxwell's book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And he asked these 7 questions in the book. And we're going to go over them right now. We're going to rapid fire them at you. I can't wait to hear from your answers. And question number 1 from that book is for Johnny Lujan. Johnny, what is the greatest lesson you have ever learned?
Man, the greatest lesson I ever learned was to not take myself so seriously.
But isn't that about right?
Yeah. And I'll give you, real quick, I'll give you a little thing that I learned. A gentleman friend of mine who was one of my mentors said, if you ever want to take yourself really seriously, go stand naked in front of a mirror and stare at yourself for 10 minutes. You'll walk away laughing, and you'll never take yourself serious again.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah. Question number 2 for Johnny Lujan is, what are you learning now?
What am I learning now? I'm learning how to be a better leader. To really take criticism as a way to work. And really to perfect my leadership qualities. I am a do-all all the time. And sometimes I don't let the other person raise their hand to serve. And so I'm learning.
Well, I love the criticism part of that because it's interesting. One of the things that I see for new leaders that's very, very hard for them to take is constructive criticism. Oh. It's not taking it personal. I'm not attacking anybody, but I tell people, hey, if you got something to tell me that I'm doing incorrectly, I don't know if I'm doing it incorrectly if you don't tell me. I am an open book. I will not be offended. Please tell me. Let's have a conversation. And then maybe it's just coming off wrong. I don't know. But that's huge when you talk about criticism and what you're learning now, because I guess not only new leaders, all leaders, when the ego gets in the way, it's hard to take that criticism. So I'm really, really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. You can't learn. You can't grow with it if you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. If I don't know, at least tell me. I mean, hell, I want to get better. Just tell me. Question number 3 is, how has failure shaped your life?
Boy, failure, man, that was the epitome of my life at the beginning. And, we'll fail until the day we die. I believe that and every failure is a learning experience. Some are harder than others. I failed in relationships. I failed in business. I failed in raising children. I failed in all aspects of life. But every time I always ask that question. I took my kids out one day and I said, how can I be a better version of myself? How can I be a better dad? And it's for a leader or a father to hear your child say, help our family as much as you help other people. You might get pissed off at your kids and say, you ungrateful little so-and-sos. But I took it as a critical into my life. My other daughter said, spend as much time with us as you do other people. Again, they said, we love that you serve so many people, but sometimes we don't see you. And those were throughout my life, those happened. And I asked those questions and I tell them, I said, from this day on, I'll never miss a soccer game. You know what? I will never help somebody else if my family's in need. And if we don't ask the question, right, if our ego's too big, our pride's too big, we could lose our kids, we could lose our business, we could lose our friends. So be open to failure. I mean, it's going to happen.
And that is one of the most powerful questions I've ever heard. That it's so obvious to everybody out there that has kids, mother, father. Hell, you can be a son or a daughter. Ask your parents, how can I be a better son? Or how can I be a better grandparent? Or how can I just be a better friend? It's such an easy question, but how often have we actually done that? I know I haven't. I haven't asked my kids, how can I be a better dad? And it almost kind of gives me a little bit of the chills because, a couple things run through my head. Do I want to hear the answer? Reality, you know what I'm saying? But number, and I guess the other thing is if I do hear the answer, how is it going to hurt the ego? How's it going to hurt my feelings?
Yeah.
And then, but the other side of that is that's pretty awesome, because if I can check that ego at the door and listen to the response to become a better parent, all of our lives get better together. We all go to the bank together. And that's powerful, man. I'm glad you just shared.
And they, when you ask that question, you just solidify the trust you have between your children. And when you take action on what they said, all of a sudden, man, everything else is, all of a sudden the honesty comes. They'll sit with you. You know, I asked my kids when they were like 12 and 14, right? And now they're 24 and 26, and they say, "Hey, Dad, can we talk?" And they're open. They ask me the question, "Am I doing good? Is there something I could be doing that's going to help me in my life?" So it's man, I tell you, that's probably one of the greatest lessons about
So
failure.
Yeah, that is so good. And I wrote it down, and I'm probably gonna do a podcast on that probably tomorrow or the next day, because there's so many ways to take that, take the positive out of that. It's so powerful. So thank you for sharing that. Question number 4 is, who do you know that I should know?
Boy, who do I know that you should know? Boy, that's a good question. For me, gosh, I got names rolling in my head, but gosh, for me, I'm all about networking. I'm all about getting people together and for the common good of a purpose. I'm in I love nonprofits and their purpose. It's like, man, who can we connect with that's going to further the purpose of humanity?
Yeah.
Make our world safer, better. Again, with same thing with kids. So I think on that one, give you a specific name, but
well, hey, it's okay. Yeah, give me one, and then like you just said, if we can share the the positivity message, and allow maybe people come on the show and just share their message and just continue to grow, because again, the more we're all in it together. We're all for sure.
There's a guy out there named David Norrie, who I met. He used to live in Arizona. He was a big networker, moved to I think North Carolina, but he wrote a book called Turned On, and it was really about, which is a great positive message about the family, about how social media and our electronic devices have deteriorated the family. So he's wrote a book, and he's got this little following where we have dinner with no electronics. We go out to little events now with no electronics. So he's a great guy, and I'll send you his info. Great guy.
Yeah, I would love that. And we'll get him, as long as we can get contacted, we'll get him on the show for sure. That would be a great conversation, because it's something, I'm a minimalist as well. So one of the things in my life and my kids' lives, we eliminate all those things. And I'll never forget, I had probably it's been 5-6 years ago. My oldest boy, he's 14 now, had an iPad. And it was one of the, we can all relate to the story. Hey, I need you to get off that. Yeah, I'll get off here in 5 minutes. Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Hey, I need you to get off it. No, I need you to 1 more minute. And it kept going on and on and on until I lost my shit, grabbed the iPad, opened the door, and chucked it out the front door. And I slammed the door and didn't say a word and just walked away. And the Niagara Falls for my oldest boy, just bawling, bawling. It was so good. But from then on, we made a decision that, this isn't going to happen anymore with these kids, because we're losing our kids in these devices instead of losing them in our lives. And it was powerful and important. So I'm glad you brought that up. Love to get him on the show. Question number 5 is, and you mentioned Turned On as a book, but what are some other, what book have you read that I should read?
Oh my gosh. A great book that I've read. Obviously I'm an old classics guy, right? Right now, working on teams. Dale Carnegie, man, you can't go wrong. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That is the number one relationship building tool. We forget about the oldies, which are everything else was mentored off of those oldies. I just read a book called Flyboys, which is a great book about World War II and our veterans.
Cool.
In my reading, I try to diversify because I get stuck in leadership and motivation. This is a good book. Where's that? This is a good book that I just got given to me, called A Culture of Excellence. Breakthrough leadership. So breakthrough principles, kind of things that we're talking about. So I'm always engulfed in books. Readers lead and leaders read.
Absolutely. I'm actually listening to Barack Obama's book right now, an audiobook. I started that. It's 29 hours long. Holy smokes. I'm 15 hours into it. It's a big, big book.
Yeah.
And, quick plug for myself. I'm going to send you out my book. I just got finished up 2 months ago, 77 pages, opposite of Barack Obama's book. You'll be able to read it in 45 minutes, but I'm going to make sure I get your address and I'll mail you out the copy of the book. For sure.
Beautiful. I got one chapter left. Of the book I'm writing, kind of the same. It's going to be a quick read on recovery, the principles of recovery without relapse. That's what it's going to be called. And I've been working on it for a long time, but
perfect. Yeah. I'll get you my book out here. Hopefully tomorrow I'll send it out. Question number 6, 2 more left, is what have you done that I should do?
Buy a Harley.
Well, this is the problem with Harley. This is the problem. I am 5'2", soaking wet. I have short legs, and I don't know if they make a Harley that fits. I've kicked it around. I've thought about it. But I see sometimes with those bikes that sit really, really low with the big fat tires in the back. Maybe I can get something like that. But my legs are so short that I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah. You know what? For me, that's my solace place, right? Yeah. That is another. At the very beginning, when we started to talk about turning your liabilities into your assets, my liability was biker lifestyle, bars and drinking and drugging and all those kinds of things. And since I was 20, I've never been without a motorcycle, and I still ride them, and I got them. And now I take that bike out, and that's my solace place. No music, no radios, no cell phones. And I'm able to go out there and really, I guess you'd say, talk to myself.
Yeah.
Ask yourself the intimate questions.
It's funny that sometimes and I think it's so important that when you are by yourself asking those questions, sometimes it's the hardest place to be, but it's also the most important place to be, because you got to work through those demons and get them all out and understand that, you have all the answers within, and you are a powerful asset. And I say it all the time at the end of the show, you do have greatness within. And sometimes we're afraid to get into our own head, but that's actually the place we need to be the most. So
place for me, there's a couple of places I go to, and when you go to that place and you're in that place and you start contemplating your life and you ask those important questions, internal questions, and you find yourself sobbing all by yourself, man,
Steve,
you feel a little embarrassed when it first happens, but I tell you what, it's a cleansing situation. You come out on top of the world.
Yeah, it's super deep, and it's super important as well. Final question for Johnny Lujan. Johnny, how can I add value to you?
Man, add value to me. You know what? I would love to be on the show again.
Love it.
For me, adding value to my life is helping me get a message of encouragement out to those that still suffer. For me, it's setting the captives free. Since 1989, when I first got sober, and I would talk 24 hours to anybody who would listen to have a better life.
I would love to get you back on the show, my friend. And I had a friend of mine that we talked about sobriety about 2 months ago. It was actually one of the highest rated shows I've ever had. And I think this show will probably do exactly the same thing, because here's a real quick thing about my show too, is I get emailed, now that the show's doing pretty well. I mean, like I said, I'm all over the world and I've got a lot of downloads. Things are going really, really well for the shows, but I get emails constantly from people that want to come on the show and they want to sell this or sell that, and I weed through, I bet I don't let 95% of the people on there, because number one, their message may be great, but I want to get to know people that have real life stories that people can relate to. And it's important to me that I have guests on that are going to give back and be vulnerable and be motivational and be inspiration, that have been through shit. And that's because I've been through shit. You've been through shit. And when you go through the shit, it's not like these fake ass coaches out there and again, no disrespect to them, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but a lot of them are just so full of shit and they've never been through anything, but they can talk a good game. Those are the people that I think they give the word coaching a bad name. And I think there are so many people out there that have an actual real message, like yourself, like Raul Lopez. I'm trying to get that dude on the show. Like like myself. I mean, we all got these messages that are real, and these are the messages that we need to spread. So when you say get you on the show, 100%, absolutely, I'll get you back on the show, and I'll get with my assistant and we'll schedule something out in a few more months. And
Yeah.
I would love that. And we didn't even talk about you helping the inmates, the church that you started. There's a lot more we got to talk about, and hopefully by then maybe your book will come out. So maybe we'll plan it right around there when the book comes out. We'll get you back on the show and we'll rock it out. But before we go, John, tell everybody where they can find you.
Boy, you can find me at johnnylujan.com, LUJAN.com. You can email me at johnny@tagteammotivation.com.
Well, I would encourage everybody to get together with Johnny, reach out, send him an email, get his website, follow him on social media too. That's where I follow him on Facebook. Follow him there. He puts all kinds of messages out there and videos. And I just, like I said, Johnny, I'll end it like I started it. I consider you a role model for me, my friend. I consider you a mentor. I am just so proud of everything that you've done in your life and all the lives that you've changed. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more and more lives we can change, it's the butterfly effect. We're not just changing the people that are immediately in front of us. We're changing their families, their friends, their brothers, their sisters, their kids. And that's why this message of motivation and inspiration is so freaking important. Everybody listen to watch the show. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. This will be out there as well. Follow the Facebook page. We got just over 12,000 people on that. So that's slowly but surely going really, really well. Run over to jeremytodd.com, grab that book. But like I say in every single episode, you've got greatness within. Like always, this is the positive side.